Yes. It should be coming through now. Is it not? Here? It's going to be on delay. Does it sound pretty good? I can change this. That might help. We can do that. I figured if somebody has a question, it'd be nice to pick it up. Yeah.
I've been there actually. I haven't.
Yeah, cool. Make sure it's. I have it on a mode where it's going to pay attention to the front of the mic more than other sides.
Mike and Sean, do you want to check out your computers?
No, yeah. There's a little hockey thing, right? It's like, yeah, it's like, yeah, it's like, it's like a keyboard thing.
So I think I'm just going to do like 15 minutes intro and then like kick it off to John, and then we'll be back.
Okay. What do you guys need in terms of dongle?
I just need
So this is VGA, and this is probably 2 gigabytes. No, it'll work. You're good.
When you go to get a project page, so you want like a tweet a link to this?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want me to just go, or do you want to? Hello, people. We are going to continue our backdrop journey. My name is Mike. I work at a company called Tandem. We do DevOpsy things. And today I'm going to talk a little bit, very briefly, about Calabox. Are people here familiar with Calabox at all? Awesome, a couple people. So just for the sort of short description, Calabox is a local development solution and also a framework. So you can kind of think about it as like a vagrant sort of thing, but it's built specifically for Docker containers. So you get all the nice benefits of that. And it's also a product, which is what I'm going to show you today, which is a very easy to use local development tool that you can use. I'm going to just do kind of a brief intro to it here. And then John, who is going to do a case study as well, will probably be able to do a deeper dive into like what the dev actually kind of looks like. So you can get Calabox by just going to calabox.io, which is this website. And you can download it on the download link. You can also download it on our GitHub page. Calabox is free and open source, by the way, just to all the people who don't know that. And right now there's actually 2 different versions that you can download. You can download the older stable release, which relies on virtual locks to run, or you can use the new experimental release, which I would actually recommend, even though it is technically still experimental. because it's just a lot better and a lot faster. So that's what I'm going to be showing you guys all today. And it is cross-platform, so if you have a Windows machine or a Mac or Linux, at least a large majority of Linux distros should work on all those things. I've already downloaded it, but it's a fairly small install or download. You can see it's between 85 and 181 megabytes depending on what operating system you're using. I've downloaded it. It is a GUI application, and it is also a utility. So I will show you the command line part of it. I will show you the GUI part of it first, actually. So when you install it, it'll just show up kind of in your applications folder if you're on a Mac. On Windows, it'll be in the Start menu, and on Linux, it'll be in your GNOME menu or your Linuxy menu is. And you can click on it to open it really quickly. You can see that I've already got a couple of sites running. There's two ways to get Backdrop on CalBox. Right now, the first one is if you click on this little Add Site button, you can just choose Backdrop here. I think this is a great way to kind of like test run Backdrop if you just want to kind of try it out and see how it goes. Actually do some more serious development on Backdrop and get some nice tools like Xdebug and access to the database and Solr and other fun things, Drush, for example. Then the better way to get it is actually through Pantheon. So I have a site, a Backdrop site on Pantheon. And using CalBox, you can log in with your Pantheon credentials, which I've already done here. I have many accounts. And what I've done, I'll kind of go through the workflow really briefly, but I'm not going to actually download it because if we did that here, I think that might take a long time. But yeah, you can log in with Pantheon. You use machine tokens to do that. And you list all your sites here. You can see here's my CalBox Backdrop site. You can click on it. You can pull it down from the dev environment on Pantheon. I've already done that, and it's this site right here. It's nice and spun up, so I can click Start. This will start all the magical containers that I need locally to run a Backdrop site. And when it's done, I should be able to go to backdrop.kbox and see my Backdrop site. We'll wait for a second. It's nice and speedy usually. So here my site is there. I click here, and here's my test sort of Backdrop site that I use, right? So I've got Backdrop down on my computer. I can start to do development. So you can go basically from 0 to all the Backdrop in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending mostly on your internet connection. So really great way to get up and running with Backdrop. I'm going to just go over some like really basic stuff, and then I think John probably will be able to do some of the more critical things. So with CalBox, especially if you're doing the Pantheon integration, you get some nice little features. So you can go into your Backdrop site. I've already kind of logged in. Maybe you want to add some content, or let's add like a content type or something. Let's call this fun. Lots of fun. Content type. Awesome, good and fast. And now what you could do is you can push that code back up to Pantheon with this nice little push button here. And this will allow you to push all your changes back up to Pantheon. You can ideally you want to put these configuration changes into code, as like Nate and Jen I'm sure have discussed, and deploy that with Git. But this will do it for you if you want to do it that way instead. So just so this will automatically push your code. So if I've exported my configuration change with Backdrop, and then I come here, and you can even see the commit message. It'll commit all those changes for me. If I also want to just push database and files, I can do that. Obviously, that's like not the recommended development practice for anyone who's doing serious development, but those are things that you also can do. Alternatively, you can go in here and sort of pull your stuff down. So if someone had pushed changes up to Backdrop and I wanted to pull them down, I can do that, nice and easy. Just to kind of give you a sense of the options that are in the GUI here for people who are not super familiar with the command line or don't like to kind of do those things. Okay. You also have this nice little connection info. And this will give you some different things that you can kind of look at to access and play around with your backdrop site. So because we pulled the site down from Pantheon, we can look at the backdrop site through HTTPS as well. So if we wanted to like dev against that, that's possible. It'll give you this sort of warning because we are just self-signing our certs since it's all local. It doesn't really make sense to have them. And you can see it, blogs into the site like that as well. If you're, for whatever reason, if you wanted to like debug a varnish problem or something locally, you can also do that. That's what these edge sort of URLs are at the top there. And then if you wanted to access your database directly, here's sort of a command line stuff you can do, your host, your port, all that stuff. You can use SQL Pro or whatever sort of database front end you want to use, or the command line. And that's how you kind of get access to that stuff. The other really neat thing about doing the dev on Calabox is the Calabox CLI, which I'll show you really quickly. Click on this terminal option and it will load up your site. So here's my backdrop site with my backdrop code. This is the app that we just spun down. And if I go here and run this kbox command, it'll give me a bunch of really neat extra stuff.
Can you put up the font size a little bit?
I can absolutely do that.
Sweet.
Max font. So if you run this kbox command, you'll see that this backdrop app ships with a bunch of fun things. There are some sort of commands that you can use. These mimic what's in the GUI to kind of start and stop and push and pull the app. But then one of the nice things about Calabox is that because we were basically running containers for everything, we can not only emulate an environment like Pantheon or just a normal sort of backdrop environment, we can also ship a bunch of tools with the environment. So when you pull this down, you're also getting Bower and Composer and Drush and Git and Grunt and Gulp and all the fun things. And all these things are on a per environment basis. So if you go in here and want to do kbox drush, for example, backdrop drush is like a work in progress right now, but the one that we're running here is actually going to be, uses all the stuff that Serendipity put in there. So you'll actually get at least most up-to-date version of backdrop drush available. So you can go in here, you can see that it knows that it's backdrop, says backdrop version, all that stuff. So a really easy way to get running with drush locally if you don't know how to do all the custom command file stuff, which is a good little thing. And then one of the other really fun things I'll show really quickly before John is ready to go is a nice little development thing, which is just Xdebug, which is set up for you sort of out of the box. So here is my backdrop code base. Good, fun things. And here's my index file, and let's just do a little hello world, so you can see that this is the same sort of code that I'm looking at. So you can see that I've changed the code there. And now let's just do. This will be a little bit different depending on what IDE you're using. I'm using Sublime Text, so you'll have to go through the instructions on setting it up if you're using PHP Storm or whatever. But there actually are some decent instructions for that in our documentation. This is our documentation for Pantheon. And this is all, you can find all this on the GitHub and on the calabox.io site. But if you have other IDEs, they should be, I think there's some basic instructions on how to get set up there. Sublime Text, PHP Storm, even pictures. So, but you can do really neat things right out of the box. So I'm gonna just start to debug. I'm really curious about this super sketchy definition that backdrop is making here, right in the entry file. Don't know what that is. Let's explore. Let's see, start. So I've started this Xdebug session. I can kick back to Sublime Text and see that I've hit this breakpoint already. And now I get all this nice sort of debugging info about the state of my code and my variables and all that fun stuff. So really great way to just go from 0 to Xdebug on your backdrop site in only a couple of minutes. I think that's basically the things that I wanted to show you. I think John can probably demo things a little bit more during his case study. Does anyone have, I know it's kind of a fast sort of overview, does anyone have any questions at all about stuff?
Does this all work with triple sandwich also?
Yeah. So that's actually a great question. So Calabox is technically platform agnostic because everything we run is inside of containers. You can actually spin up any kind of environment you want. That said, the ones that actually come with CalBox by default are Backdrop, 777, 888, and WordPress. If you have a Pantheon site, we support all the products that are offered there. So I think can you use a Drupal 6 site? You can use a Drupal 6 site still for the people who are still there. Yeah, so these are the 4 big things that we do right now. I know that somebody actually is writing a plugin for Magento, so that might be added to the mix pretty soon. We'd like to do other integrations with Platform and Acquia and other things at some point, and hopefully add more things to the list as well. I know yeah, the mean stack has been mentioned as a possible thing. Well, I think Laravel has been mentioned. But our expertise is in PHP things, so this is kind of just our entry point to everything. But hopefully we can get this to be lots of different things. Anyone else have any questions?
I just want to make a comment. You just have to make sure there's no space on your home directory if it's simply server.
What's that?
Well, that you have to make sure if you're going to install something, that you just have to make sure that you have enough space in your home directory, because you can't like symlink to a different drive or something that has to be. But that's probably
So if you
underlying, not CalBox specifically.
yeah, so CalBox is based. Yeah, CalBox is based on 2 sort of, depending on which version you get, it's based on 2 sort of fundamental technologies. The first one is Sheen, which uses this small version of Linux called TinyCore Linux, and adds a bunch of rules about file sharing. And for that, it'll only share your home folder into the VM. So all your stuff has to be in the home folder. I think that's probably what you're referring to. On the new version of CalBox, you actually have a lot more ability to configure those things. So this actually might work for a custom drive or something. But we're using this new Docker for Mac thing instead of VirtualBox and Docker Machine. There's a lot more lightweight, a lot closer to your thing. You don't need VirtualBox, which is great because VirtualBox it's good, but can be better. And you actually can add kind of your own mappings in here. So if you had a custom drive, I think you could probably, you can see here, volumes. So you just have to kind of figure out, where to put that. But I think it shares these 4 things by default. And then I think you can add something else in there. So I think that would actually solve your problem. But if you're using the older VirtualBox one, it will only share your home folder, so you have to have all your things in there. Otherwise, the sharing is not going to work.
So by default, are your files accessible from the Finder, or do you have to like export them, share them to get them visible?
Like your Drupal files?
Yeah.
Like your code base?
Code, yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what this is all about. One of the hardest things to do in local development, if you're doing containers or virtualization, is basically just sharing your files from your host machine to your container.
Yeah.
So I think we actually do that fairly well, especially with this new version. So your code is going to be on both sides of the equation. It'll be inside of the containers running your site, and it'll be on your host machine. So if you go to this actions folder and click on code, like here's your code. So this is your code on your Mac. Here's your backdrop site right here. So you can go in, and so here's like my index, right? I can go in here and just like edit this. And this is on my, let me stop Xdebug.
So it parallels Dev Desktop. That kind of thing.
I would say that doesn't parallel Dev Desktop in any way, but I suppose maybe there it does. But yeah.
I mean, that's a good thing. I like the way Dev Desktop does.
Yeah. I mean, Dev Desktop is nice because it's all native, so there's actually no distinction. Everything is just your code just right there.
Yeah.
Similar for like man. You're not using a VM at any point, so it's just your code is just there on your host. So you don't have to worry about it. So this is one of the things about VMs. But I think that if you try this out and you're putting your code in the right place and not having this problem with the thing, this should appear as though it's on. It'll seem as though it's on your host machine. You won't be able to tell the difference.
And hoping you hear.
Yeah. So especially if you use the new version, which does that a lot better than the older version. The older version there's a little bit of a lag time, which is one of the problems in doing this. Anyway, that's it. I want to let John go so that we can continue the voyage. Okay. You just want the VGA.
Right there, I'll grab it.
Maybe I should focus the camera on your screen.
All right. My name is John Willett. I am a Senior Development Support Manager with Calamuna. And I instituted basically starting to use Backdrop with Calamuna. I wrote a blog post about the first Backdrop site we built. It's how it kind of landed me here. And kind of just goes through, at least from a technical perspective, how it compares to Drupal and how I built it, but I'm just going to show you anyways. So the site we built was the California Jobs Roadmap. How this came to be was we have a client called the Bay Area Video Coalition. They're a big nonprofit here in the Bay. They came to us as a support client. They're on Drupal 7. It's a very large site that integrates itself, works in commerce, and it's a very fun site to work with. However, they had an old site called California Jobs Roadmap, and they came to us and they got a $10,000 grant to redo this old static-y WITS type of site. And at the time, you know, I sat down and I write about it in my blog post how I came to the decision to use Backdrop. I mean, we're at a crossing the roads as far as like development goes. As far as Calamuna goes, a majority of our smaller nonprofit sites, we always build with Monopoly and Calapine. And then that way we can spin out sites very quickly. And it only takes us a couple of days to build a site that looks like this. And you know, the profits are much higher for the company. However, I felt like it was a disservice to them to build something in a technology that's going to be antiquated in 2 years, 3 years. We do build WordPress sites, but however, I hate the theme layer of WordPress. So, you know, doing that and then Drupal 8 just isn't ready. It still isn't ready. And I've built a couple of Drupal 8 sites, and it's just, like I put in the blog post, there's a lot of hang-ups. So I had seen Jen present Backdrop about 2.5 years prior at Florida Drupal Camp, and I always thought it was a good idea because I'm the type of person that I enjoy people that do something instead of complain about it. So, and I kind of dug a hole. Yeah. But anyway, so I started using Backdrop before even the stable was released, even though I didn't really build anything. I fooled around with it, played, yada, yada, yada. So flash forward to right before the summer. It was right before 1.4 came out. So this site is still actually on 1.3.6, I believe. So it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that have come out since then. I think on Pantheon 2, it only goes up to 1.4.4 still. So, I mean, basically the requirement was, I mean, they spent most of the money, actually Darius designed this site. He was working for us as a contractor at the time. And they spent most of the money on design. And the site itself is very, very simple. I mean, there's not much to it at all. It's 3-4 pages with a view and a web. But, you know, it looks really nice and it's, you know, it's responsive and all that fun stuff. And you know, we like to use Bootstrap as our responsive framework for everything. Sometimes we use Foundation as well. But however, so with all those requirements in mind, you know, I came to the decision that, you know, I'm basically to do this. And I went to Backdrop's website and I started, they had Bootstrap Lite as a theme. And I only needed the web form module basically in Develop, and the rest was in Core. So, you know, I made the decision and we trucked ahead. And that's it. So one of the things out the box too is one thing I like is because being that we are a panel shop, we built everything, you know, with layouts already in Drupal 7. When Nate was going over the layout part of it, I mean, it was almost like a second nature to me because I've been building sites like that for 3-4 years. However, they fixed all the crap that's wrong with it in Drupal 7, and it makes it a lot easier to use. Unfortunately, I have an older version of Calabox on my machine before Pirog. If you want to use Backdrop with the experimental version, because the drush command don't work with the version I have right now, so I'm going to do everything manually. But I'm on Linux, so I use everything CLI. I don't use any GUI stuff. So. The one thing I noticed, like everybody says, I mean, Backdrop was very performant right out of the box. I mean, it is very snappy in general. You know, from a developer standpoint, everything is at least you know, structurally very similar to Drupal 8. If you've done anything in Drupal, at least the file structures and everything like that. So, you know, being that I've been using Drupal for many years, like it's still in my head. I always go to sites and I'm like, where the hell is everything? And then I go back and I'm like, oh yeah. But I mean, that's about the only hang up. It's a little bit different. But one thing that's different that Nate didn't talk about with the layouts, I make all my own layouts. I don't use the ones that are in Core, which they're fine, but I had specific requirements. And if you've done this with SQL Page Manager or any other type of panels based setup, it's very similar, but it's actually easier to understand. So before, if you ever did this in Drupal 7, there was like a plugin variable that you would set everything to, and it was kind of confusing, like, where does this even come from? And now, at least, you know, like Nate had explained that the regions are at the layout level, which systemically makes more sense than putting it at like a higher level. So you can have more control per page. And that's what I did. So I basically went through and made all these fancy layouts with you know, Bootstrap, column grids and other fun stuff like that around it. And I mean, that's it. And if you've done this with panels, even though I keep saying that, but I mean, everything is basically the same. Like you have, you know, your actual panel page and things like that, and it all corresponds to the region over here. Very simple. And another added bells and whistles, it comes with its own preprocessor as well. And like Drupal 8, and everything is entity-based, it seems. So it has like a preprocessor, entity name, and then whatever type. And the reason why I did this was, at the time, Bootstrap Lite was throwing all these weird-ass classes on things, so I just removed them. And I did this for every layout, and it's very simple and easy to do. And that's that. It's all in one file location, which makes it very easy to diagnose if anything goes wrong. And this all correlates to, if you come over here, the front page. Now here's the layouts I did to build this. I have a default layout which controls 2 of the pages, then I have the training page, which is the view page, and then I have the front page. So basically, I mean, this site only has 3 pages, so I mean, but if the default layout I have more, it would follow that. So you can define a default layout, and if you need to tweak it, you can. It's very customizable, but if you look here, all that nonsense I was just saying, it all correlates to right here. This is where all the blocks are. And I did make a, just for the hell of it, because I wanted to try things out. I didn't really need to. It does come with a custom block setup, but I made my own for the footer. And that's here. Like, and all the hooks and everything are very similar to if you're used to doing it in Drupal 7 and things like that. So the terminology, the API, everything is the same. And like Jenna said, the only thing that's different is the process functions are gone now. It's the only reason why I haven't taken Caliph and imported it to Backdrop yet, because they've used a lot of that. And maybe one day I will. But yeah, so if you're a developer and you write code, I mean, the learning curve is nil. I mean, you just can hop right in, and if you know what you're doing, there's a few different caveats. Like everything will be like Backdrop get paths instead of Drupal get paths and shit like that. So it's very simple. Just if there's ever a word Drupal, just use Backdrop. That's it. So, yeah. Yeah. And then like you know, I also use if I look through real quick, I also use better exposed filters, which yeah. So basically, this site, I built this entire little tiny site with only 4 intro modules, and one of them is meta tag, better exposed filters, develop, which isn't really used in production in web form. And that's it. I built this whole site. The rest of it's all styling and fancy stuff. And if you look at the actual theme layer, I mean, there's a few templates, typical stuff. The one thing, and I wrote about this in the blog post too, some of the tipple clips are different within Backdrop. There used to be like you'd have HTML and page, and then you get like to the node layer. It's a little bit different, but it actually makes more sense. You basically have the header and things like that, and everything all split out. It's a lot easier. It's more granular and easier to understand. There is a page a tipple clip, but you don't really use it anymore.
It's the same as it was in Drupal 6.
Yeah. Okay.
So we kind of reverted back to a similar time where page.tpl.php and HTML.php and Backdrop is equivalent to HTML.tpl.php in Drupal 7. So it's just like your HTML tag.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different, but like, I mean, the learning curve, and another thing I noted too on my blog post is the documentation is on point. Like, whomever did that did a stellar job, because like if anybody that goes to POs and it's just 10 years worth of crap, and you're like, I have no idea what's going on anymore, what to search for. And like, it's like things are very, very easy to read and find answers to. I mean, this is built like any other Drupal site you would see. I mean, at least a simple one. I mean, there's a couple, node templates, and I have this is the one that controls the view. Very simple. If you ever built like a field-based, field view. I mean, so everything is pretty much the same. And I built this site in like 2 days. Most of it was like, one day was like figuring out stuff, and the second day was theming it. So, and then like maybe there was a day of QA where the client went back and worked, and that was it. So that's it. And another thing too is the reason why we chose Backdrop 2 is two things. I mean, one, it works with CalBox, and that's our main development tool at Calamuna, has been. And Backdrop was released, and so there was no like. I don't use Vagrant anymore, and I haven't in years, so there was no like trying to figure out how to get shit to work, and I just kind of it kind of took it away. Number two is on Pantheon. Bayback was already on Pantheon, and to have like a $25 a month performance post with no configuration to work right out of the box was great. So I mean, those were a couple of the reasons why we decided to do it this way. So that's about it. I mean, that's more of a development technical standpoint how I did it. But is there any questions? All right, thank you.
So I need to log into your YouTube channel. Is that the? Well, this guy showed me his credit card in New Orleans. I like just seriously glanced at it, and now I like can't forget his credit card number. And then I keep like saying it back to him, so I think it's funny. But it's like one of these new fancy cards. And I was upset with me. I'm like, I can't forget it. It's like, well, buy you more drinks. I'm like, I'm not sure that's the right solution.
see if we can hear it. Okay, so. So.
Wait, you want to do audio as well, you said, or just video? Whichever you guys want. I think just video would probably be better. Yeah, everything's showing up backwards because it's flipping it. It's very awkward. And you'll come through on there. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you for bearing with me while we get set up. My name is Matt Cheney. I work at a company called Pantheon. And what basically I was going to do in the next 20 minutes is give you a sort of overview of the Pantheon system and talk specifically about how you can use it to develop backdrop websites. I know you've seen some sort of local development solutions, which are obviously great to work on your computer. But if you're looking to sort of take this into production and work with collaboration with other people, this is the kind of system that could be very valuable to you. One of the sort of overall caveats, or I guess like awesomenesses I'll throw out there, is that all the stuff I'll show you today is free to use as development, to test, to try out. The Pantheon sort of business model is only to charge you if you actually go live with the website. So feel free to develop and test anything that you want on the platform. That's one of the reasons why on the Backdrop CMS site, there's a spin up on Pantheon option, so that folks can actually take it for a spin and try out different things. And so that's something I think that could be very valuable if you're sort of trying to figure it all out. The way to sort of get started with Backdrop on Pantheon is that you sort of do need to go to the Backdrop CMS website. You go ahead and hit spin up on Pantheon, and this will take you to a login screen if you're not logged in. If you are logged in, it'll allow you to sort of, specify your site and go ahead and make that all happen. I assume a number of you are familiar with Pantheon. How do we feel? Quick show of hands. Who feels like they're decent with Pantheon? No. Okay, we'll go a little more in depth on this. But this is how you get the Backdrop site set up, and you'll actually go ahead and get the install. Once you have a site set up, and I have a few of them set up, you log into your Pantheon account, and you'll see a number of different pictures for all the different sites that you have, including this Backdrop site that I set up earlier. This shouldn't be that crazy, although if you haven't logged in Pantheon in a while, we've continued to do some improvements to the actual dashboard. The main stuff I would sort of call out here from a sort of new and cool perspective is if you're interested in additional security for your Pantheon site, we have the ability to do a sort of social login to connect your account to a Google Authenticator. So you could have a Google do like a two-factor authentication on your account, which could provide some additional security for you, as well as if you're looking to use sort of SSH keys to do different authentications into Git or into SFTP, you can set up your SSH key session here. And if you're looking to use our machine token API, you can generate a machine token here. These are all ways just to connect to Pantheon without using your password and have an ability to do even more powerful things. A lot of the stuff I'll show you is going to include sort of the ability to do this. The other piece I'd sort of call out is we have this section called organizations that exists. This is part of a sort of series of tools in the platform called Pantheon for Agencies. That's free for you to sign up as an agency. We define agency as any one person or more that works together to do website development. So if you sign up for that, you sort of get a dashboard of all of your different sites that allow you to sort of see and quickly filter the sites that you have. So, you know, you could have different upstreams for all your different backdrop sites. You could have different service levels for sites are live or not. You've got this cool tagging system you can use to, you know, organize, you know, what's going on. And you can easily manage your sites as well as your people in your organization, give them different access permissions. So if you're maybe a, you know, main contractor or doing business with customers, but have a few people who are sort of your developers, you can just add them as normal developers and start building teams this way. It's a really great way to sort of have multiple sites be managed all at once and be able to sort of organize your work that way. But for most of you, you're probably going to sort of just jam here on this normal dashboard, seeing your sites. You're going to log in and say, I'm going to create a new backdrop site today, or I'm going to go to my existing site to do some development. And so we'll cruise into this site that I created earlier today to do development. So nothing too maybe sort of crazy here. I've just taken backdrop and installed it, and I've gone ahead and instantiated a development, a test, and a live environment. So you'll see dev, test, and live. This is sort of the heart and soul of the Pantheon workflow, is being able, or any workflow, is being able to do some development in dev, and then test in the test environment, and ultimately deploy it. One of the things that I think I know we got some sort of vibe earlier today about was this configuration management system in Backdrop, which I think is a really excellent addition to the project, and something that actually allows you to really take full advantage of the dev, test, and live infrastructure. So one of the things that I do when I'm setting up a new Backdrop site is I basically will go ahead and make sure that the configuration of my site is not only imported into the version control, but it's also specified in the version control itself. And there's a few different ways you can do this, of course. One way is to define the individual paths for each configuration based on environment. So you have a different directory for dev, a different directory for test, a different directory for live. The other way, which is more of maybe just a simple way, is I just go ahead and create a new directory in my Backdrop configuration, just call it config. So this is the first thing I did when I set up my Backdrop site, is I changed the settings.php and added a configuration directory. And then I went ahead and once I installed my site, I went into my configuration management. I did an export of all of the configuration, a full site export, which got me this all of the YAML file or the JSON files for the configuration. And I took all of those files and I put them inside of that configuration directory on a Git checkout, and then I actually committed all of those in there. So these are all the JSON files for the configuration. And what happens is then I push that up to test, and I push that up to live. And this is probably something I think if you're looking to set up a Backdrop site, some sort of setup like this is going to be to your benefit. And here's why. Because as a developer, I'm going to be starting to make changes in my development site. So one thing I might do is I might decide to add some views, add some different content types, change some of my layouts around, or you know, maybe even do a simple change, like I'll change the name of the site from Backdrop Pantheon Demo to Awesome Backdrop Pantheon Demo. And I'll go ahead and save that on the site. And once I've got that saved, along with any other configuration I have, I can actually add that specifically to version control. So this is something maybe you're familiar with if you're looking to actually export these items out as you know, in tar balls and move them around. But if you want to have the robots do the moving for you, you can go ahead and click export. You can get the configuration directory right here, which is all my new JSON. And then I can do, inside of my Backdrop directory, you'll see I have that config folder right here with all the JSON files. And I can go ahead and take all that configuration I just have, put it here. You can see on a sort of diff that all I've done is change the site name, you know, changing the site name. And I can go ahead and do that commit. and I'll go ahead and push that up. And now, like, this is a change that now exists in version control. So myself and my colleagues can see this really straightforwardly. It's going to actually go ahead here and sync on the dev environment. And then I can use the Pantheon workflow to actually do a deployment to move it to the test. So, you know, changing the site name. And I can do something like this. And this is actually going to go get my test environment ready to do that import. So this is something just from a perspective of development that you're probably going to make a lot more changes in dev, of course, different configuration, different files. But you can then put your configuration into code this way so that when it gets deployed, it's going to deploy out along with all the other changes. And that's helpful because you can obviously audit it and see that's happening. You can also revert it if you like made a mistake. And you can also run a lot of automatic tests as well. One thing that I think might be new to you if you use Pantheon a little bit is when we do those operations, like moving from dev to test, Pantheon actually has an entire system called Quicksilver that's designed to allow you to actually do stuff, sort of scripts, after you actually do deployments. So this is a blog post I wrote sort of showing off the Quicksilver platform hooks. And the idea is after you do a deploy to test, instead of just, you know, sort of sitting there and being like, okay, we've deployed the test, check it out, I actually show sort of how you can, you know, notify your Slack that like a deploy has happened. So that's pretty straightforward. You just put in a little bit of code into your site, and it'll run that. I show how to do a cross-browser test. You just kick off a quick browser test, kick off a visual regression test, kick off a performance test. And these are things that if you're looking to do more complicated DevOps, that once a deploy item is initiated, like I just did, you can then run new PHP scripts after, which is very powerful. Of course, once I actually get rolling and get into my site, one of the things that I'm going to want to do is go ahead and log in using my extremely secure situation. Sorry. Because I made a change in the configuration management, I can actually go quickly do a synchronization. So you see the site name is still backdrop Pantheon demo. And if I want to go import that, I can just hit import all, and then it'll actually take that JSON file and it'll push that in. So that now the change has been synced, and now I have an awesome backdrop Pantheon demo, which is cool. And that's just nice because it like saves you having to like manage the tarball files. It also puts it in version control. So hopefully see the benefits of that. A couple other cool things that you can do in Pantheon for backdrop sites. So right now I'm in Git mode. So that's, you saw me do the Git checkout and Git push. One of the other features Pantheon